You look at your schedule and feel a quiet, dark sense of pride. Every hour is heavily optimized. Every notification is instantly processed. You tell yourself that this is simply what it takes to rise above the rest, that you are built for an intensity that others cannot survive. You call it high performance. You call it an elite mindset. It is a brilliant, devastating disguise. The truth is far less impressive. You are not a high performer. You are highly functional and completely dysregulated. You have successfully rebranded your chronic baseline anxiety as a professional necessity. Today, we are going to dissect the architecture of your burnout. We are going to examine the toxic traits you wear as psychological armor. We will dismantle the illusion that your relentless, exhausting motion is a sign of superiority. We will expose the subconscious scripts that are actively destroying your mind, all under the acceptable guise of being an elite professional. By the end of this, you will completely understand the false comfort you find in your own exhaustion. Trait 1. The mirage of the elite mindset. We exist in a modern framework that has perfected the art of weaponizing your deepest insecurities. The culture surrounding you dictates that if you are not optimizing every waking second, you are fundamentally failing. It takes your latent fear of being average and monetizes it. It convinces you that panic is a valid, sustainable fuel source. You have normalized a state of perpetual threat. You wake up and immediately scan your environment for danger, an unread message, a pending deliverable, a slight, imperceptible delay in a project. Your brain registers these, not as simple logistical updates, but as literal survival metrics. You do not run on passion. You run on a continuous, toxic drip of cortisol. Admitting that you are terrified of failing is too painful. So, your ego steps in and rebrands that terror. It tells you that your hypervigilance is a superpower. You mistake the adrenaline of a looming self-imposed deadline for the feeling of deep purpose. You mistake the tightness in your chest for ambition. This creates the dopamine loop of the always-on professional. Every time you cross a complex task off your endless, impossible list, your brain delivers a microdose of reward. You clear your inbox, and for exactly 3 seconds, you feel a fleeting sense of control. The tension drops, the dopamine hits, and you feel accomplished. It feels exactly like growth, but it is actually internal decay, because the relief is entirely conditional. It evaporates. The moment the next email arrives, you are functioning exactly like an addict chasing a high that requires more and more dosage to achieve. The 12-hour workday that used to make you feel like a hero is now just your minimum baseline. The lever requires more and more frantic pressure to yield the exact same result. You look down on those who rest. You view their stillness as a lack of drive, completely blind to the brutal fact that their nervous systems are secure, while yours has been entirely hijacked. You are actively sacrificing your physiological baseline for a gold star from a system that is entirely indifferent to your survival. You do not just want to be productive, you desperately want to be seen as indispensable. You use the societal glorification of busyness as a massive, impenetrable shield to deflect from your own internal emptiness. If you are always moving, if you are always solving crises, the terrifying silence of your own mind can never catch up to you. This profound fear of stillness forces you to adapt. It forces you into a specific, highly destructive pattern of behavior. The absolute, unyielding need to be constantly, overwhelmingly available to everyone except yourself. Trait 2. The Hyper-Responsiveness Trap. You are never truly offline. You have allowed instant accessibility to become your defining personality trait, with AI-integrated workspaces seamlessly blending into your personal life. You exist in a constant, inescapable state of perpetual micro-stress. A notification pings and your nervous system spikes. Your heart rate elevates. Your breathing becomes shallow. You do not even think about it anymore. You just react, like a trained animal, responding to a bell. You take a massive, quiet pride in being the fastest to reply. You love being known as the most responsive team member. You tell yourself it proves your dedication. It proves your elite status. It does not. It proves you have absolutely zero boundaries. The brutal reality of your lightning-fast response time is entirely fragmented attention. You are everywhere at once, and therefore you are nowhere. You suffer from profound cognitive fatigue because your brain is never allowed to complete a single deep thought. You are playing an endless, exhausting game of psychological ping-pong, mistaking rapid movement for actual progress. You are so obsessed with managing external communication demands that you cannot see the internal damage being done. You answer immediately because if you hesitate, you fear they will realize they do not actually need you. Your speed is a mask, a frantic, desperate mask, hiding a profound terror of irrelevance. You shift the focus from your own internal pressure to the external demands of maintaining flawless standards, which brings us to the next layer of your armor. Trait 3. Perfectionism. As a defense mechanism, you call yourself a perfectionist as if it is a badge of honor. You use it as a humble brag. You say, "My biggest flaw is that I care too much." Stop lying to yourself. We need to completely deconstruct the myth that perfectionism equals quality. Let me repeat that slowly. Perfectionism does not equal quality. It is merely a highly sophisticated fear of being found inadequate. You do not obsess over the microscopic details because you simply love the work. You obsess over the details because you are terrified of criticism. If the project is absolutely flawless, if there is zero room for error, then no one can question your value. It is a preemptive strike against rejection. You are trying to control how other people perceive you by eliminating every possible flaw. In our current remote hybrid era, this optimization obsession has become completely lethal. You spend hours tweaking a presentation that was already finished. You review an email 5 times before finally hitting send. You research variables that have absolutely no impact on the final outcome. This does not create value. It leads to severe diminishing returns. It leads directly to paralysis. You are not refining your work, you are hiding behind it. Your intense fear of making a mistake has morphed into a complete inability to disengage from the work entirely. When you finally close your laptop, the anxiety does not stop. It follows you. You lie awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, mentally revising conversations that already happened. You run simulations of future failures. You cannot separate your inherent human worth from your professional output. If your work is flawed, you subconsciously believe that you are fundamentally flawed. So you bleed into the spreadsheet, you bankrupt your soul into the project, and you call it dedication. You use your intelligence, your exactness, and your drive to avoid the terrifying vulnerability of simply being human. Because being human means making mistakes. And to your dysregulated nervous system, a mistake is not a lesson. A mistake is a threat to your survival. Trait 4. The weaponized grit fallacy. You have been taught that quitting is the ultimate sin, that pushing through the pain is what separates the elite from the weak, so you weaponize your own resilience. You completely ignore the physiological signals of burnout, treating your exhaustion as a badge of professional honor. Your body is literally screaming at you. The chronic migraines, the insomnia, The knot in your stomach every Sunday evening, the utter lack of joy in your achievements. Your nervous system is shutting down, and you proudly call it gritting through it. You treat your body not as a living organism, but as a machine to be driven into the ground. You need to identify the exact point where resilience stops being a strength, because right now, your grit is not a virtue. It is a stubborn, reckless refusal to accept basic human limitations. You believe that admitting you are tired means admitting you are weak. You view the need for rest as a character flaw, but biology does not care about your ego. You cannot outwork a physiological collapse. You push forward, fueled by an adrenaline deficit, completely blind to the fact that you are actively destroying the very vessel required to do the work. You think you are building a legacy. You are actually just digging your own grave and demanding applause for how fast you can shovel the dirt. Trait 5. The architect of your own destruction. You need to face the final, brutal realization. These traits you possess, the hyper-responsiveness, the perfectionism, the weaponized grit, they are not sustainable virtues. They are the architects of your inevitable collapse. You are operating a high-performance system while actively pouring sand into the gears, and you are proud of how loudly the engine screams before it dies. It is a profound delusion. You are not optimizing for longevity. You are optimizing for an eventual, catastrophic breakdown. You have convinced yourself that if you just survive this week, this month, this quarter, things will finally slow down. You tell yourself that the chaos is temporary. That is the biggest lie of all. The chaos is not happening to you. The chaos is created by you. You construct emergencies out of minor inconveniences, because without the crisis, you would have to face the terrifying emptiness of a quiet room. You manufacture urgency because it makes you feel important. If there is no fire to put out, who are you? You do not know, and that terrifies you, so you keep running. You keep gritting your teeth. You keep sacrificing your health, your relationships, and your peace of mind, all to maintain the illusion that you are an elite performer in complete control. But true control is the ability to stop, and you cannot stop. Trait 6. The deliberate starvation of connection. You isolate yourself and you call it focus. You decline the invitations. You skip the dinners. You mute your friends. You convince yourself that these social interactions are mere distractions from your ultimate goals. You tell yourself that the path to greatness is meant to be walked alone. It is a very convenient narrative, but it is entirely false. You do not isolate yourself because you are so focused on success. You isolate yourself because maintaining human connection requires vulnerability. It requires presence. It requires you to be something other than a high-functioning machine. If you sit at a dinner table with people who truly know you, you cannot hide behind your title. You cannot use your productivity as a shield. They will look into your eyes and see the exhaustion. They will see the anxiety. And you cannot afford for them to see that. So you starve yourself of connection. You build a fortress of deliverables and deadlines around yourself, ensuring that no one can get close enough to witness the collapse. You are deeply, profoundly lonely. But instead of addressing that loneliness, you just add another project to the queue. You use your ambition to justify your isolation, completely ignoring the fact that a life built entirely on output is a completely empty life. Trait 7. The commodification of your own identity. This is the final and most lethal trait. You have entirely lost the ability to separate who you are from what you do. If someone were to ask you who you are, without mentioning your career, your output, or your goals, you would freeze. You would have absolutely nothing to say, because you have sold yourself. You have taken your intrinsic human value and traded it for performance metrics. You view yourself not as a person, but as a highly optimized asset. When the asset performs well, you feel temporary worth. When the asset fails, You feel absolute devastation. You do not experience joy anymore. You only experience relief that you did not fail. You have become a commodity in your own life. And the most tragic part? You volunteered for this. You stepped onto the auction block and handed them the gavel. You must realize right now that these 7 traits are destroying you. We must transition now. We must move away from the societal glorification of busyness and confront the reality of your situation. It is time to look at reclaiming performance through strategic rest. If you want to actually survive this, you must undergo a brutal paradigm shift. You must outline the shift from resting to recover to resting to thrive right now. You only rest when you are completely broken. You rest when your body forces you to stop. You use rest as an emergency room visit, just trying to patch the bleeding enough to get back on the battlefield. That is not rest, that is medical triage. Resting to thrive means scheduling your recovery with the exact same ruthless aggression that you schedule your meetings. It requires setting non-negotiable boundaries with technology. No more checking emails in bed. No more just quickly reviewing a document on a Sunday morning. You must draw a hard, impenetrable line between the machine and the human. You need actionable steps to replace these 7 toxic traits with sustainable high-impact habits. Habits that do not just extract value from you, but actually prioritize your longevity. You must start by sitting in silence. For 10 minutes a day, no phone, no screen, no music, just you and the terrifying noise of your own mind. You must learn to tolerate your own existence without the numbing agent of productivity. You must practice intentional underperformance in areas that do not matter. Let an email sit unread for 24 hours. Send a draft that is only 80% perfect. Watch the world not end. Watch the sky not fall. You have to retrain your nervous system to understand that your survival is not dependent on your perfection. You are going to experience withdrawal. When you first attempt to implement non-negotiable boundaries with technology, your brain is going to panic. It will feel exactly like failing, because the dopamine loop of the always-on professional is being forcefully severed. You are going to stare at a notification and you are going to let it sit there unanswered. Your chest will tighten. You will feel a physical, agonizing urge to reply. You will feel the hyper-responsiveness trap pulling at your nervous system. Do not move, sit in the discomfort. You must face the reality that modern hustle culture in 2026 rebrands chronic anxiety as a high-performance necessity. You have been brainwashed into believing that panic is productivity. It is time to outline the shift from resting to recover to resting to thrive. Resting to recover is what you do when you are completely broken. Resting to thrive is an aggressive, calculated strategy. It requires providing actionable steps to replace these 7 toxic traits with sustainable high-impact habits that prioritize longevity. Actionable step 1. Redefine what constitutes an actual emergency. 99% of what you react to is pure noise. It is other people's poor planning disguised as your urgency. Let them wait. Let them experience the friction of your absence. Your instant accessibility via AI-integrated workspaces creates a state of perpetual micro-stress. You must cut the cord. You must set limits that offend people. Actionable. Step 2. Dismantle your perfectionism as a defense mechanism. You must deconstruct the myth that perfectionism equals quality, revealing it as a sophisticated fear of being found inadequate. Publish the B- work. Send the email without reading it 5 times. Expose yourself to the terrifying reality that making a mistake does not result in your immediate destruction. You must move from the fear of making mistakes to the inability to disengage from the work entirely. And you must actively reverse that process. You must disengage completely, coldly. Actionable. Step 3. Drop the weaponized grit fallacy. You must identify the point where resilience stops being a strength and starts being a refusal to accept human limitations. You are a biological organism. You require sleep. You require absolute silence. You require periods of profound, unapologetic unproductivity. If your version of high performance requires you to operate like a machine, you are not a high performer. You are simply a victim of a system that is using you until you break. You are analyzing the danger of gritting through physiological signals of burnout as a badge of professional honor, and you are completely ignoring the fatal alarms. This leads into the final realization that these traits are not sustainable virtues but architects of collapse. We must conclude with a vision of high performance that integrates psychological well-being as the primary metric of success. Look at the true elite, the actual masters of their craft. They do not rush, they are not frantic, they are deeply, uncomfortably silent. They are controlled. They do not contrast the pride of being the most responsive team member with the reality of fragmented attention and cognitive fatigue. They do not care about being the fastest. They only care about being the deepest. In an era where everyone is loudly broadcasting their busyness, silence is the ultimate flex. You have been playing the wrong game entirely. You have been measuring your worth by how much corporate abuse you can endure. You have shifted the focus from external communication demands to the internal pressure of maintaining flawless standards, and it has hollowed you out. It is time to stop. Stop trying to prove your worth to a system that will replace you before your funeral is even over. Stop using the transition from the societal glorification of busyness to the specific trait of being overly available
as a way to hide from yourself. The traits you thought were making you invincible
are the exact 7 toxic traits disguised as high performance that are burning you out. The mirage of the elite mindset is finally fading. So what is left? When you strip away the titles, the metrics, the optimization obsession in the current remote hybrid era that leads to diminishing returns and paralysis. When the Slack channels go quiet, when the inbox is closed, who is sitting in the chair? If you do not know the answer to that question, you have serious, profound work to do, and absolutely none of that work can be done on a spreadsheet. It requires stopping. It requires you to finally look at the person you have been running from. The truth may sting, but it will make sense.